Hello, hello.
Okay. So if we haven't met before, I'm Jodie.
And I'm Nat.
And we would love for you to subscribe to this channel if you are interested in anything to do with international house sitting, having a travel lifestyle, being happily homeless, having a roaming income, living location independent, being a digital nomad, all those different terminologies.
All that fun stuff.
Having retirement, travel, fun, all those things. Come and subscribe. Literally go down below, subscribe, hit the notification for getting a little bell sign so that you get notifications of our new videos, because we've got lots of fun stuff coming up on this channel very soon.
Definitely. All right, so in this video we're going to talk about fear, but more specifically fear about starting a travel lifestyle. So leaving your home, everything that's familiar, perhaps a job. That's a big one for people because money always represents security. Your friends, your family, all those things that play on your mind, I guess, when you're really deciding, should we go and have a travel lifestyle?
Yeah, that's it. And this is sort of on the back end of a conversation I had yesterday. So one of our House Sitting Academy members made a recommendation to a friend of hers from her hometown. And this friend of hers knows it's Sharon, and Sharon, when she was back in her hometown before her marriage ended, where she was raising 3 sons, she was described as being a very different person to who she is now. The person she is now, after traveling full-time for over 4 years as a solo female in her 50s, has just become so inspiring for this friend of hers. And I'm chatting with her saying, well, what's stopping you? It's like you've got this inspiration in Sharon, who you've seen transform, and she's out there doing all this stuff. What's stopping you? And she's like, absolute fear. Absolute fear of, what do I do? Like, all I've known my whole life is, ever since I was 18, is having a full-time job. How can I just walk away from my job? My parents, I'm really, really close to them. They're getting a bit older now. Like, how can I leave them behind? Like, would I be able to get back to them? So we just sort of started talking and tackling each one at a time. And the first one was with family, because it's really important. And in our experience of having travelled now for 6 years full-time, but having been away from Australia for, 7.5 years or something, it's crazy amount of time.
8 years, yeah.
We are now actually closer to our families than when we were living here, because what happens is, no matter where it is that you live, in your home country, unless it's right next door, you're probably not going to see your family all that often anyway. And then there's this sort of take it for granted aspect to them, where you're not getting real, you're not getting deep, you're not getting into real conversations all the time. So this lady moved from New Zealand to Australia, and she said, actually, in the last 12 months, I have actually had better conversations and had more trips back to visit my parents than when I lived 2.5 hours away in the same country, which is kind of
funny,
crazy,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen our family we're back in Australia right now, but we hadn't seen our family for 2 years. Prior to that was 2 or 3 years. But we always Skype with each other, we Zoom. Like, there's just so much technology these days that enables you to keep in contact with family and stuff. And I do agree with Jodie. I think I'm definitely closer to my mum and dad now that I have left, because the conversations are far richer, and I think we're not taking each other for granted anymore. We actually, when we sit down to do a Skype call, which is only every couple of weeks or something, we might do an hour or so, it's really precious time, like they're not seeing me all the time, like they might see with my brother down the road type thing. So it's like, I don't know, it just becomes more special in many ways.
Yeah, and I first experienced this back when I was 20. So I was 21, I think it was. I went to the UK as a typical, gap year type of Australian going to get the overseas visa. And during that particular year, I got really, really close to my parents. So I sort of started the ball rolling a long time ago by being away to form better relationships.
Yeah, but I think on the back end of that too is the other aspect, that what are your friends and family actually going to think about you having a travel lifestyle? So I think it's sort of an interesting question, because you sort of think, oh, everyone will be really happy about that and stuff. But then maybe there's a part of you at the back of your mind, I don't know about other countries, but certainly in Australia, there's this whole thing about tall poppy syndrome. So if you're out traveling the world and doing all these great things and stuff, it's almost like people want to pull you back down to earth type thing. So it's sort of like, no, we don't talk about like how wonderful my lifestyle is, and I'm tripping around the world and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, because it sort of almost gets people feeling a bit squirmish because it's sort of like, oh, I'm not doing that. Well, it's okay for you to do that sort of thing, or you've made the decision and I can't do that. So there's sort of this, I don't know, it's sort of a comparison type thing going on.
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, you actually can absorb, especially if you're somebody who's quite sensitive, you can absolutely absorb somebody else's fear and start to think it's your own.
Yeah. Sure.
So let's say it is, you know, your grandmother or your son, or, you know, somebody, a really, really close friend, and they're literally going, I don't know how you could do that, you know, especially if you're solo. It's like, well, it's going to be too scary for you. What are you going to do? What
too dangerous.
What if this happens? What if that happens? Which part of the world are you going to? I mean, you could just imagine that, you know, here we are in our first same-sex relationship in our early 40s, and we drop the bombshell that we're going to go and live in the Middle East. It's like, oh my God, the amount of fear that got thrown at us going, you're crazy. Like, they hate women there. Just to clarify, they don't. They absolutely adore and revere women. But, yeah, it's sort of this whole idea of going, you know, okay, well, we're not going to go out and flirt the fact that we are a couple, but we certainly were accommodated for that. So other people's fears can sort of push onto you, and you can start to think that they're your own. And a lot of the times you just got to dive in a little bit deeper. And the key thing about the word fear is those 4 letters. I was going to write them up actually.
Right.
F, false evidence appearing real. Now, false evidence appearing real is a little bit like an idea that when you look into the future, whatever that thing is in the future hasn't happened yet. So it's already appearing as if it's real, but it has to be false because it's not here yet. The thing hasn't happened. The thing that you're fearful of hasn't happened. Yeah. So we're big believers and subscribers to the concept that you never really know something until you have had a direct experience of it. And when you're fearful of something, obviously, if you're fearful of death, you don't want to go and experience death in order to have a direct experience of it. But all in all, most things that you're possibly fearful of, you can kind of at least face the fear, as they say, face the fear and walk through the door with it.
Yeah, I think particularly for different locations and stuff. Like we were going to Nicaragua, and you know, our parents were beside themselves because it's like, oh my God, all this is going to happen, and I've seen this in the news and that in the news over the years and blah, blah, blah. So it was like, no, we're going to go and have our own experience of that and see what it actually is like. So when we went there, it was great, of course.
We do need to point out that it was before the latest upset. So we actually did get to see Nicaragua in a beautiful way, particularly Granada. Yeah. And unfortunately now, at the point of this recording, they have gone through a lot there. And I think it's even more important that tourists do get back there because it is a beautiful country. Political and social unrest is just never good anywhere. But that particular place as well, we start to look at, you know, the fear of what it's like to have lived in a place that maybe where gunshots have gone off. You know, we've seen walls where there were holes in it. But again, that wasn't our reality. We weren't there in that time. We do have friends who were there in, you know, periods of unrest. But every single experience that is had by anybody makes them a richer and more wise person as well.
Definitely. And I think as far as your friends as well, like it's interesting for us, you know, I left Sydney. I grew up in Sydney. Mum and Dad were there for 50 years in the same house. Can you believe it? And no, I don't really feel such a connection there anymore. Mum and Dad have moved on, and it's sort of funny to go back there now. Like this whole time that we've actually been in Australia, I haven't actually gone to Sydney yet. So when we do go, we've only got, you know, a day and a half, 2 days really available to us. So we'll be seeing a few people, but not a lot, obviously, in that time. So, but has been interesting because we've kept in contact with some people over Skype, but we've actually caught up with people overseas. So we've actually seen different friends of ours, like close friends of ours, who are actually traveling, and we've happened to cross paths overseas as well and catch up with them there. So it's sort of almost like going, well, why do we need to catch up in Sydney or at your home base type thing? Why don't we just catch up somewhere else? Let's go to Europe and catch up.
And the nice part about doing that is that you're getting to see your friends and family in their their more joyous state, as opposed to the day in, day out dramas of life. You're getting to see people when they're happy. So we just spent a whole time on this, on just the family. Maybe we need to do another video another time.
Just going to suggest that, not that we actually discussed that, but I would actually like to come back and make this a bit of a series about different fears that come up, because I think we can dive in deep. There are lots of fears, and probably ones you haven't even become conscious of, that are probably sitting there in the background, that as you take a step forward to like towards a travel lifestyle, you might go, oh, actually I didn't realize I was actually quite fearful of that. So let's do that. Let's come back tomorrow and address another fear, another little section of life that might be holding you up from having a travel lifestyle, because it is an amazing life to have if you can move past these fears. And some of them you won't move past until you're out there having the experience, and that's important too. You're
probably going to hear us harp on about that the most, is that you literally will never really know something until you have your own direct experience of it. So it really doesn't matter how great we say it is, or this person or that person or anybody else that we come across. But what does happen is when you do gather with all those kindred spirits and all those light minds, which is what is going to happen in September 2019 at the very first House and Pet Sitting Conference. The energy, we can feel it already. When you have that many people with the same outlook on life, the same sort of just, I don't know, flow to their own life, it has a big ripple effect. So if you want to kind of get into the rubbing shoulders in that regard and have that energy rub off on you, then it's definitely about hanging out with people who do it.
Yeah.
Be inspired by that.
Absolutely. So down below, we're going to have a link to our Travel Lifestyle Plan Handbook. Now, this is a free handbook you can go along and download and basically work through it. So it's going to take you through all the different aspects, probably more the logistics of having a travel lifestyle rather than the stuff that we're talking about in this particular series now, about more conscious aspects of it. And the thought processes and moving through the mindset stuff, which is really important. This is the logistics side of it. So, insurances, and what are you going to do with your stuff? Are you going to sell your house? So, like all these things that you have to consider about getting on the road, we cover in the Lifestyle Handbook. So please go down below here and click through and grab that. Super important.
Yep.
All right.
So we'll balance out the left brain and right brain with the videos and the handbook, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
All righty. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Bye.